Hello everyone, it's Jess Conto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And it is still John Ford season here on the show, and we're getting into the final months of this 80-week journey, and we will be talking about What Price Glory. That sounds really awkward to say.
What Price Glory?
That's the name of the movie we're talking about that we just watched. What Price Glory. And joining me is my wife, Jess. Jess, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome, Shane.
And if for those who have not tuned in before, we have 3 segments. We have coming attractions for Friday, August 23rd. As, we're just chugging along. August is almost over. The summer is almost over.
Don't do that.
Both of us working in some form of educational field. So, it is soon a new school year. But then we'll get to our feature film, What Price Glory, and then we have some recommendations for you. So, Jess, we have The Crow coming out this weekend, which nobody seems to even realize nor really care about at this point. And probably not Lionsgate either, as they're probably in the Bay Area. But what are you most excited about?
I'm going to go with Blink Twice.
Why are you excited for Zoe Kravitz's writing and directorial effort starring Channing Tatum?
You put in a good word for it.
I sure did, because I did get to see it, and it kind of blew me away.
Yeah. I have the utmost faith in your opinion.
It definitely hit that, indie horror thriller with a good cast kind of vibe of Get Out and Bodies, Bodies, Bodies in the past couple of years. And I hope a lot of people go check it out and it picks up some buzz, because it certainly deserves it, because it was a blast. But obviously I already saw it, so I did pick a different film which I am very excited about, which is Between the Temples, starring Jason Schwartzman and Carol Kane. Jason Schwartzman is not
He's a cantor?
I was going to say, not a great cantor. Oh. He's a little awkward. He has problems with his singing. And when an older woman, played by Carol Kane, wants to get her bat mitzvah, he needs to step his stuff up. And is there a romance here? I don't know. We're going to have to find out. And he seems a little suicidal as he lays down in the road and wants a truck to ride over him.
Oh.
This seems like it's going to be one of those kinds of comedies, and Jason Schwartzman and Carol Kane are fantastic. And I'm looking forward to checking it out. I will be writing about it for Sif Pop, so hopefully when it comes out, you can check out my thoughts. But let's get into our feature film for this episode, which is What Price Glory. And of course this is a John Ford film starring James Cagney as Captain Flagg, Dan Daly as First Sergeant Court, and they're fighting over Charmaine, played by Corinne Calvert. And just a little bit of background on the film. This is a Technicolor war film, which we'll get into, because there's some gorgeous shots, despite the fact that we watched this on YouTube with really low quality.
Yeah, it was questionable.
This is based on a 1924 play of the same name. It uses virtually none of the play's dialogue, which is interesting. John Ford's like, I like that idea. Screw the rest of it. Was meant to be a musical originally before John Ford signed on to it. And it starred James Cagney, only signed up because it was supposed to be a musical.
Feel bad for him.
And when he found out that it wasn't going to be, it was too late for him to back out of the film.
That sucks.
This was also turned into a film back in 1926, and the co-writers of the screenplay are the parents of Nora Ephron.
Interesting.
As it's Phoebe Ephron and Henry Ephron. So, Nora Ephron, who would go on to write one of the greatest romantic comedies of all time, When Harry Met Sally. So it comes by honestly and with plenty of comedy. And one last thing, John Ford actually directed a stage version of the play in 1949 to benefit the Military Order of Purple Hearts. The stage performance starred Ward Bond, Pat O'Brien, Maureen O'Hara, Gregory Peck, John Wayne, Harry Carey Jr., and George O'Brien.
Wow, that's pretty star-studded for John Ford films.
Well, and this was a play.
I would love to see John Wayne on stage.
What's interesting is, like, this had a bigger star
than
the movie.
Yeah,
so,
right.
But you did get James Cagney, who was Yankee Doodle Dandy. And, of course, it's like, one of those kind of old... He was in a lot of those, like, gangster movies where James Cagney was the one who kind of, like, that was him. That was the persona. But, Jess, what were your general thoughts on What Price Glory?
First thought, that is not, if I were to swing at a title, it's not what I would have swung at, but that's okay. I feel like you can tell it was supposed to be a musical. It kind of has the trappings of that, like, kind of silliness. There were a lot of tonal shifts, which I thought were interesting. It's like,
and you know how you deal with those tonal shifts?
Comedy?
Alcohol!
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they do spend a significant portion of this just
drinking.
Just completely wasted.
Which you also brought up a point while we're watching, too, besides the tone and silliness of a musical, it seems like it has, like, the staging and stuff like that.
Yeah, it looks like a stage production, really. Just the way that it's staged and laid out and everything. And even the way people stand, it's very theatrical and dramatic, which I know is part of it. It didn't feel like a dramedy. It felt like a comedy, and then a drama, and then a comedy.
Okay.
And then a drama, to me.
Yeah, because there's some, like, serious moments, like, because, this is World War One. People were
war.
dying.
People literally were dying.
It was literally war, so there were certainly moments. I think the thing that stood out to me most was especially when they showed the few shots that they showed of the battlefield and stuff like that. It was beautiful.
There's a house where they were hucking grenades at it and stuff.
Like, the final scene, the final shot as they're walking off, marching, very drunk, both Court and Flag, you just see this gorgeous sunrise coming, and just the colors, the Technicolor is so rich, which is interesting because this is the second straight film that John Ford used Technicolor for, right after The Quiet Man. And this is a film that certainly leans heavily into the comedy. It's a romantic comedy, as Jess pointed out while watching. This is The Challengers of 1952. As we have this love triangle, and they're not playing tennis, they're just, military men who drink a lot.
And do war sometimes.
Drink mostly, though.
Yeah.
Because I really like the climax of this film. Like, felt like there was some real emotion here, and James Cagney was giving a great performance.
I thought that was, like, the first time, though. It was almost the first time in the movie that they showed any emotion.
So a lot of the
There's a lot of heaviness.
Yes, like they saved a lot of it until like he's processing the death of this young soldier who's just a kid. He's drinking his sorrows away. He pleads his love for Charmaine, which was the original name of the film, was supposed to be Charmaine, which they probably should have kept it, to be honest. But he's pleading his case. Colvette is having this connection with him, but then her new fiance that just happened like one scene earlier where they became, well, he kind of stated she was his fiance.
Yeah, she
without asking.
Like, yeah, I thought it was good for her that she finally was like, I'm going to pick. And they're like, okay, pick. She's like, I don't know.
I don't know. And they kick her out of the room while they play cards to figure it out.
Your fate's in our hand. Maybe it's because they knew they would start shooting.
And, like, it got really tense between Daly and Cagney, and Court and Flag are two drunkards just, going at it with each other. I thought this movie was a lot of fun. It is odd that, like, this is... Because, like, you have stuff like MASH, which was also satirical and taking a lot of shots.
It was more darkly funny, though.
Yeah, this is just silly funny. And everybody seems to be having a grand old time in this small village.
Yeah.
And
being ripped apart by war.
I do feel like it's an important piece to realize, too, that this village kind of represented this reprieve from the war where they didn't feel like they were in it anymore. And both Court and Flag kind of resigned by the end to being like, I'm done with this. And then them getting ripped back, snapped back to reality. Of nope, Everybody's furloughs, everything is canceled. We're all going off to war.
Surprise, it's still war.
Yeah, and this is 1918, so like this is the very end of World War One.
Town looks pretty good for having been.
Doesn't look the worst for this French town during all this. I think like Cagney and Calvert and Daly all give really strong performances. A lot of it's comedic. Cagney just has that energy about him. He has a lot of energy.
Chaotic.
He's very expressive. Yes, he does have a chaotic energy to him. And for like a little guy, he has like that kind of presence as well. And then Daly's just like towering over him.
He's
like
dude.
lurching it around. This is a film that like I didn't love, but like I had a good time watching. And you're right, there's tonal issues. There's also like elements have aged poorly in terms of like the male-female dynamics and the romance. But like I feel like by the end the film kind of took the stance like these two guys have just been acting like they have some kind of ownership of her. But the only
probably gonna move on. She did before.
But the only ownership that's left in the movie is that the military owns them. Where it's just like, hey, no matter what either of you want to do, you're coming. And that's kind of where it like rips it back, and they kind of get what they deserve.
Yeah.
Because both of them were being assholes by the end, and the way that like there were some nice moments between like Cagney and Covet and Daly and Covet, but like by the end, it's just like she deserves better than like both y'all. It's like you both are hot messes, and there they are, thumping around at the front of this line.
She had already patted her beds too. She found a British officer.
It's one of those.
We love that for her.
It's one of those kinds of things where like, I don't think this film's really gonna stick with me long term, but it was a fun time watching for what it was. It was a little long. Like this was John Ford's second longest film.
So it didn't need to be.
Now, like this hour and 51 minutes, it felt like it had a musical length because it felt like it was probably going to be a musical. There are moments of music, which there's an interesting amount of that in John Ford's films, which seems odd to me, but he really liked his music being incorporated, and there's some good musical moments. Not like musical genre moments, but inclusion of music and people singing in context in the film. Nobody like broke out and started singing about their feelings.
No.
I do wish that we got a nice, fun drunken duet.
Yeah, they didn't really sing. I mean, Court sings a bit, but.
But James Cagney's like been in actual musicals and stuff like that, like Yankee Doodle Dandy. So it was very interesting. But Jess, do you have any other thoughts on this war comedy?
No, war comedy is an interesting genre. So.
It is, and it was. But Jess, what would you like to recommend to all the folks?
I'm gonna go with the Blob, the 58?
58.
I thought it was fun, and there are some oddly prophetic things in it. I was like, oh no, this would be funny if it was 1950s, but it's 66 years later, so it's a little less funny.
We're gonna drop the Blob in the Antarctic, and as long as the ice caps don't melt.
Yeah, as long as it remains frozen, wink. And I was like, don't wink at me. Stop it.
Unfortunately, that is not doing the thing. But also, as we were watching this, I said we should totally get a team-up horror film between the Blob and the Thing. They meet up in the Arctic.
Yeah.
And then come and wreak havoc.
It's the Arctic and Antarctica, so both poles are screwed.
But it's really funny because, like, this movie is an hour and 23 minutes. And a lot of it has nothing to do with the Blob.
Yeah, it's a lot of just people being stupid. It's
but when it has the Blob in it, it's fun, it's silly, it has some iconic moments, and some interesting usage of, like, it seeping through the grate in the projection room, or, like, when the guy first gets it on his hand at the very beginning and stuff like that.
He's got, like, jelly hand.
Jelly hand! And
we're pretty sure the dog makes it.
Yes.
So, low stakes if you're an animal lover.
But in the end, this is a campy and fun, silly creature feature from the 1950s. So very on point. And Steve McQueen at 28 years old, looking like he's 40, playing a teenager.
It's the lead. The lead in the balloons.
He's a rough-looking 28-year-old.
Yeah.
For 28.
You kids? I'm like, who are you talking to? I don't see any kids.
And then my recommendations, one, new film, Sing Sing. What a beautiful, emotional journey, an important film, a significant film in the context of why our country needs to rework our prison system.
Prison reform.
And it's one of those kinds of things where Coleman Domingo is so great. Clarence Macklin, also great. And this just tells a story that is hopeful and what things could be in our world. And that one scene with Coleman Domingo towards the very end of the film, like, really hit. It was really impressive. So go check it out once it finally gets around, because it is taking the slow rollout. Because this technically came out July 12th in New York. And it's taking so long. And we saw a press screening last weekend, and it's still not playing in theaters around here.
I mean, not a dry eye in the house.
Yes. And we even got a special Q&A afterwards with some former incarcerated people who have gone on to do some really impressive things and given back to these programs.
Specifically with mural arts in Philly, which if you're local to the area, you've seen these murals. They're beautiful. And there's volunteer opportunities. Just volunteermatch.org, I think it is. I found some.
My watch list film from this week was The Courtship of Eddie's Father. With little Ronnie Howard.
Boy, was he.
Little ginger boy. Trying to be a wingman for his dad, who is now a widower. And he has options. And like a young woman who is trying to do her best and happens to have a tie of her naked on it. The nurse across the hallway, who's definitely the top choice, but he's Glenn Ford's too dense to realize it, and prim, proper, high-class society lady. And, it's a comedy. It has some emotional moments,
I thought he was a believable child. I mean, it was pretty, I say, forward-thinking for the time to have, like, a single dad. And, I mean, there was a bit that was critical of people being critical of him. So
yeah, it was
doing his best.
I thought it was a really nice movie. Honestly, it was funny. It had some great moments. It had some, like, Glenn Ford did a really good job. Like, Ronnie Howard was great.
I thought he was a believable child. I mean, he was a shit-ass kid. But, like, that's how kids are at that age. And he was going through something. Yep. Like, I got it.
And then my last recommendation from one of my movies that I rewatched, which I had to get a new 4K copy of because my DVD doesn't work anymore, is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. If you've seen The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, Nick Cage loves this. His
daughter does not.
This is like peak early trend-setting German expressionism.
If you want to get some goth outfit inspo, goth aesthetic.
If you wanted to know where Edward Scissorhand got his vibe, it's from the zombie-type insomniac character that gets hypnotized in this.
So funny how all that runs together, too. The, like, chronically sleep-deprived sad boy.
Such a vibe today. Hot Topic wouldn't even have anything if it weren't for films like this laying down the groundwork for then Tim Burton to pick it up and run with it. But no, this is a classic horror from the early 1920s. This and Nosferatu really laid the groundwork for a lot to come after this. And side recommendation for Nosferatu as well. But no, I wrote my article for the Wasteland collection on this for this month because this is an important trend-setting and trailblazing film from early cinema, and you should go check it out. It's definitely on YouTube because at this point it's easy for use. Easy for use. But Jess, thank you so much as always for coming on and being my guest, especially on all these John Ford movies.
You're welcome.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.